Damn Weird. The Iguanodon. The Iguanodon. I know, it's a real creature that did exist. But Damn Weird's about the weird, as well as the Iguanodon comes up in cryptozoology as an explanation, as well as people have claimed sightings of it still. But first we want to deal with its history of its discovery, which in itself makes some of the cryptids and the stories behind them seem less crazy. Because this went through, what's amazing is this is not seen as a cryptid, because even its history is in question. But it's accepted. So it's to show things can change. What was once a cryptid can become a discovery of science. Although others were saying it beforehand. Iguanodon is an arthropod dinosaur that existed roughly halfway between the mid-Jurassic and late Cretacean. While many species have been classified as genus Iguanodon, dating from the late Jurassic period to the early Cretaceous period of Asia, Europe, and North America, research in the first decade of the 21st century suggests that there is only one well-sustained species, which lived from the late Permian to the early Cretaceous in Belgium, Spain, England, and possibly elsewhere in Europe, between about 126 and 125 million years ago. The Iguanodon were a large, bulky herbivore, distinctively featured, including large thumb spikes, which were possibly used for defense against predators, combined with long, prehensile fifth fingers, able to forage for food. The discovery of the Iguanodon was long been accompanied by popular legend. Story goes that Gideon Mantell's wife, Marianne, discovered the first teeth of an Iguanodon in the strata of the Tilgate Forest in Whitman's Green, Cuffield, Sussex, England, in 1822, while her husband was visiting a patient. However, there is no evidence that Mantell took his wife with him while seeing patients. Furthermore, he admitted in 1851 that he himself had found the teeth. Not everyone agrees that this story is false, although it is known from his notebooks that Mantell first acquired large fossil bones from a quarry at Whiteman's Green in 1820, because also theropod teeth were found, thus belonging to carnivores. He had first interpreted these bones, which he tried to combine into partial skeletons, as those of a giant crocodile. In 1821, Mantell mentioned the first herbivore teeth and began to consider the possibility that a large herbivore creature had been present in this strata. However, in 1822, publication Fossils of the South Downs, he as yet did not dare to suggest a connection between the teeth and his very incomplete skeleton, presuming that his find presented two large forms, one carnivore and the other herbivore. In 1822, he first presented the herbivore's teeth to the Royal Society of London, but the members, among the William Buckland, dismissed them as fish teeth or the incisors of a rhinoceros from the territory stratum. On 23rd of June 1823, Charles Liddell showed some to George Cuvier during a survey into Paris, but the famous French naturalist at once dismissed them as those of a rhinoceros. Although the very next day, Cuvier retracted, Lyell reported only the dismissal to Mantell, who became rather diffident about this issue. In 1824, Buckland described Megasaurus and was on that occasion invited to visit Mantell's collection. Seeing the bones on 6 March, he agreed that these were some giant sauron, though still denying it was an herbivore. Emboldened, nevertheless, Mantell again sent some teeth to Cuvier, who answered on the 22nd of June, 1824, that he had determined that they were reptilian and quite possibly belonged to a giant herbivore. In a new edition that year, Cuvier admitted his earlier mistakes, leading to an immediate acceptance of Mantell's and his sauron In scientific circles, Mantell tried to collaborate his theory further by finding a modern-day parallel among the extant reptiles. In September 1824, he visited the Royal College surgeons, but had first failed to find comparative teeth. However, assistant curator Samuel Stutchbury recognized that they resembled those of an iguana he had recently prepared, albeit 20 times longer. A more complete specimen of a similar animal was discovered in a quarry in Maidstone, Kent in 1834, which Mantell soon acquired. He was led to identify it as an iguanodon based on its distinctive teeth. Maidstone slab was utilized in the first skeletal reconstruction and artistic rendering of the iguanodon, but due to its incompleteness, Mantell made some mistakes, the most famous of which was the placement of what he thought was a horn on its nose. The discovery of a much better specimen in later years revealed that the horn was actually a modified thumb. Still encased in rock, the Maidstone skeleton is currently displayed at the Natural History Museum in London. At the same time, tension began to build between Mantell and Richard Owen, an ambitious scientist with much better funding and society connections in the turbulent world of Reform Act-era British politics and science. Owen, a firm creationist, opposed the early versions of evolutionary science, transmutationalism, then began debating the usage which he would coin as dinosaurs as a weapon in this conflict. With paper describing Dinosauria, he scaled down dinosaurs from lengths over 60 meters, about 200 feet, determined that they were not simply giant lizards, and put forward that they were advanced mammal-like characteristics given to them by God. According to the understandings of the time, they could not have been transmuted from reptiles to mammal-like creatures. In 1849, a few years before his death in 1852, Mantell realized the iguanodons were not heavy pachyderm-like animals, as Owen had put forth, but had slender forelimbs. However, his passing left him unable to participate in the creation of the Crystal Palace dinosaur sculpture, and so Owen's vision of the dinosaur became that seen by the public for decades. With Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, he had nearly 24 life-size sculptures of various prehistoric animals built out of concrete and sculpted over a steel and brick framework. 2 iguanodons, one standing and one resting on its belly, were included. Before the sculpture of any standing iguanas was ready, he held a banquet for 20 inside of it. In 1891, they were moved to the Royal Museum of Natural History, where they're still on display. 9 are displayed as standing mounts, and 19 more are still in the museum's basement. The exhibit makes an impressive display in the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Science in Brussels. A replica of one of these is on display at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. The science of conserving fossil remains was in its infancy, and new techniques had to be improvised to deal with what would soon become known as pyrite disease. Crystalline pyrite in the bones was being oxidized to iron sulfates, accompanied by an increase in volume that accompanied the remains to crack and crumble. When in the ground, the bones were isolated by anoxic moist clay that prevented this from happening. But when removed into the drier open air, the natural chemical conversion began to occur. Dallow's specimen allowed him to show that Owen's prehistoric pachyderms were not correct for Iguanodon. He instead modeled the skeletal mounts after cassowary and wallaby, and put the spike that had been on the nose firmly on the thumb. He was not completely correct, but he also had the disadvantage of being faced with some of the first complete dinosaur remains. A problem that was later recognized was the bend he introduced into the tail. The origin was more of a less straight, as shown by the skeleton he was excavating. and the presence of ossified tendons. In fact, to get the bend in the tail for a more wallaby or kangaroo-like posture, the tail would have had to be broken. With its correct straight tail and back, the creature would have walked with its body held horizontal to the ground, arms in place to support the body if needed. Excavation of the quarries were stopped in 1881, although it was not exhausted of fossils, as recent drilling operations have shown. During World War I, when the town was occupied by German forces, preparations were made to reopen the mine for paleontology, and Otto Jekyll was sent from Berlin to supervise. The Allies recaptured Barnshart first, as the first fossil life force layer was about to be uncovered. Further attempts to reopen the mine were hindered by financial problems and were stopped altogether in 1921 when the mine flooded. Research on Iguanodon decreased during the early period of the 20th century as world wars and Great Depressions enveloped Europe. By the end, though, at least 15 individuals from 2 to 8 meters, 6 feet 7 inches to 26 feet 3 inches long, have been found. Iguanodon material has been used in the search for dinosaur DNA and other biomolecules in search by Grammar Emery. Iguanodon bones were processed to look for remnant proteins. In this research, identifiable remains of typical bone proteins such as phosphorate proteins and polysaccharides were found in a rib. In March of 2004, dinosaur hype again renewed, and the sightings of a 3-meter-tall, gray-colored creature with a head like a dog and tail like a crocodile. A multiplicity of news agencies picked up the story, with headlines that included "Hunt for Dinosaur on Volcanic Island," "Dinosaur Discovery in Papua New Guinea," and "Police Hunt Dinosaur-like Creature on the Island." It was near Rabaul that the March sightings occurred, specifically a few miles south in a marsh just outside the province. A police hunting party was sent to search of the mysterious dinosaur-like creature after reported sightings in the jungles of Papua New Guinea. Villagers in the volcanic island province of East New Britain said that they fled in terror after seeing a 3-meter-tall, gray-colored beast with a head like a dog and a tail like a crocodile. An eyewitness, Christine Samai, told reporters she had run for her life after stumbling across the animal, which she said was as fat as a 900-liter water tank. I heard the people talking about it and went there to see for myself. It's a very huge, ugly-looking animal. A government official said the villagers had identified the creatures from books and movies about dinosaurs. "They told us it was a dinosaur," said one official. The creature was also said to have eaten 3 dogs. In any case, 6 police officers armed with M16 rifles and villagers carrying both knives searched the area but came up empty-handed. Like Nessie of Loch Ness, Kokopo's Mayor Albert Baranga said the dinosaur would make a great tourist attraction for the area. What do you think? An elaborate hoax? Did locals get together to construct or fabricate a media-grabbing story? Sure, in all fairness, they could have. But when conducting just a little research, it is found that this isn't the first reported sightings of dinosaur-like creatures in Papua New Guinea. In fact, to find the first one, you have to go back to 1999. The independent newspaper of Papua New Guinea reported that a dinosaur-like reptile was seen on 2 occasions in the Lake Murray area in Western Province. It was December 11, 1999, when villagers traveling in a canoe reported seeing a large animal wading in shallow water near Bobo. The following day, a Seventh-day Adventist pastor and his church elders said they saw the animal not far from the first sightings. The creature was described as having the body as long as a dump truck and was as wide as nearly 2 meters, equal about 7 feet. It sported a long neck long slender tail, and was walking on two hind legs as thick as coconut palm tree trunks, with two smaller forelegs in front. The head was similar to the shape of the cow's head, with large eyes and sharp teeth as long as fingers. The skin has likened to that of a crocodile, and the creature had largish triangular scoops on the back. I find it interesting how a lot of times you'll hear people describe an animal, and they'll go various: dog, cow, lizard. They'll give different things they think it looks like. But if you took an animal that no one had ever seen and a group of people to look at it, I bet you a lot of them would have different answers for the exact same creature that they're looking at. Different things to them that they say, this looks more like a dog. No, this looks more like a cow. It's all based upon some personal bias when they're trying to describe to you what they have never seen before, which is odd for someone making up something. One similarity that we can immediately pinpoint is that witnesses of both animals likened what they saw to a dinosaur. Both creatures also were compared in some way to a crocodile. The first had a tail like a crocodile, while the second was likened to that of a crocodile. Also, both creatures were considerably wide. Christine Semai described the animal she saw as being as fat as a 900-liter water tank, while the creature spotted in 1999 was said to have been as wide as nearly 2 meters. And lastly, both were apparently standing. The first was said to be 3 meters tall. Of course, when something is referred to as being tall, it usually means head to foot. But in a standing position, furthermore, 3 meters, about 10 feet, would make for a big animal, and if locals were only referring to its height from foot, shoulder, the animal walking on all fours, that would make it a ridiculously giant creature. No, it was 3 meters tall from head to foot, standing. The second creature's description, thankfully, wasn't so ambiguous. It clearly stood upright, as it was said to have been walking on 2 hind legs as thick as coconut palm trees. With the smaller forelegs in front, did they see the same type of dinosaur? If they indeed were dinosaurs, possibly, although there are some slight differences. One possession of the head of a dog, while the other a cow. Although different, however, these two shapes from the creatures easily mold into a similar size or shape. Lastly, the neck of these creatures was described as being long. While no length of the neck was mentioned for the first creature, it would help if we knew what the definition of long was, and also what type of neck the former creature possessed. One thing previously mentioned that is still debatable is whether iguanodons walked on 2 legs or 4. More recently, it has been argued that it spent most of its time walking on 4 legs, although it may have run on its hind legs. Because we can't be sure either way, the testimony of the witnesses who said the animal stood upright can neither be accepted nor discredited. One argument against the iguanodon theory with regards to the March sightings is that the creatures reported ate 3 dogs. Iguanodon was a vegetarian, although whether strictly vegetarian is another question. Or quite possibly, the creature simply killed the dogs, leaving locals to think that it ate them as well. Another explanation is that both of the creatures is a relic theropod dinosaur. In the 1999 sighting, it is reported that the creature has sharp teeth as long as fingers. The report of the creature eating 3 dogs is consistent of theropod dinosaur diet of meat. The closest theropod found from Papa is the New Australian Megaraptor, dubbed Lightning Claw, at 7 meters in length, surpassing at 5 meters length. Nevertheless, both theropods is significantly smaller than the sightings described. Thank you, and please subscribe.